Hi there, and welcome to the second video exploring the workflow option in CollectionsIndex Web Edition. In the last video, we used the object entry procedure as an example of a simple workflow. Today we're going to look at a different procedure and see how different roles can be applied to workflows to control who can and can't complete certain steps. For example, if you were doing a conservation workflow, you'd probably want to make sure only someone flagged as a conservator in your organisation could sign off on crucial steps. Before we get into the next example workflow, let's take a quick look at workflow roles. If you have workflows enabled in your system, any user can be assigned a role which will control what workflow steps they're able to complete. We control workflow roles in the person's authority record that is linked with the user account. So if we scroll down to the description section, we'll see this workflow role field here. Now you can see in our system we have curators who will be undertaking most of the workflows, we have approvers who authorise key decisions, and registrars who control certain steps such as issuing accession numbers. Now the terminology for workflow roles is completely flexible and you can have as few or as many different roles as work for your organisation. Also note in this case that users can have multiple roles if desired. Now we're not going to make any changes to roles right now, we're not going to edit anything else about our workflows. That's for a future video, so let's get back to our example workflow. If you watched video 1, you will remember we completed an object entry workflow and at the end we spawned an acquisitions workflow. So today we're going to follow that next workflow and explore it as a different example. We'll see what kind of different steps we see and we'll also see how those workflow roles come into play. So here we are in our object entry workflow that we've completed, and you can see we've already created a linked activity here which is going to be our acquisition workflow. Now this is currently empty, but if we click on the name or we go to our acquisitions records and find it, we'll be able to work through that workflow. So let's jump in. So here we are in the acquisitions workflow. We can see the steps available to us which are highlighted, so none of these steps have been completed yet. Let's go ahead and start to fill these in. Note that I'm currently logged in as a user who has a curator level workflow access. Now our first step is a choice step. It's asking if we need to create a new object record. Now we don't, because we already did that during our object entry step. And just like the workflow we saw before, when we complete a step, we have the tick next to it and some information about who completed the step and when and what answer was recorded. And remember that the steps that appear to us are very much dependent on how we complete other steps, a bit like that flowchart approach. So now we've selected that we don't want to create a new record, we just want to review records already in our system. We have the review object step, which is popped up. So here we can actually go into find more objects to have governed by this acquisition activity, but in our case we know we've already got one object associated here. That's the only object we need, so we're just going to press complete. We'll just move through the rest of these steps. So these are a bit like some of the steps we saw in video 1. These are data entry steps. This one's for a authority record, so we'll just quickly work through these. And again, this is another choice step. So what is the type of acquisition? And obviously these will have maybe slightly different steps and considerations attached to each of them. Let's say this is a gift. We're being asked to record a reason for the acquisition. So let's put that chairs are a priority collecting area. And just at this point, it's probably worth noting that the titles of our steps and the sentences that explain them can all be customized if we edit workflows. So if we have text here referencing a collections development policy, we could go into more detail, reference other documents if we wanted to. That's all possible. We're not going to do any workflow editing today, as we've already said. That is a topic for a future video. Okay, so we've done those steps and we've got one left here, request permission to acquire. Now, we've not seen this type of step yet in our videos on workflows, and the function of this step is to assign a user to complete future steps that we don't have access to. So in the context of object acquisition, this is to get someone who has that approver workflow role to approve the acquisition. So we'll see people with approver access on this list. We'll pick a user, we'll hit complete, and they will get a message to say, you need to go into the system and continue with this workflow and do the approval step. And as you can see here, this user has a list of the steps completed. We're still in the workflow. We haven't been kicked out, but there are no steps available for us to complete. So this user has to wait now until the next step is approved by somebody else. So let's log out and log back in and see what a different type of user does next. So I've now logged in as a different user and one with an approver workflow role. And I've gone to the same activity workflow. You can see my view is very different. I've only got one step to complete here, which is called decision to acquire. At this step, of course, I can review what items are attached to this record. I could go back and review the entry procedure here, and the information captured so far about our acquisition is down here as well. But assuming I've reviewed all of that and I'm happy to approve, I can click on this step and I can make this choice. And let's say, yes, we will acquire this object. And now I have a step here to assign back to a curator to continue with this workflow on this acquisition. Or at this point, if for any reason something's gone wrong, maybe the donor has decided to pull out, we do have this acquisition failed option, which will effectively end this workflow. But in this case, everything is still good, and we're going to assign this back to our curator to carry on with their good work. Okay, let's jump back across to another user and carry on. So we're back again, this time logged in as the curator role. As we've seen, our next step was approved and it's been assigned back to the curator to carry on with the remaining steps in our workflow here. We can see if we scroll down to this admin section that our approver has been busy changing things and doing steps since we last logged in. Let's carry on through these steps available to us now. So we're not going to go into too much detail. This is a question about making a choice if we've already done an object entry procedure or not. Of course we have. We can include questions about copyright as a choice on workflows. Obviously, let's say there's no copyright issues here, but obviously if we said yes, we'd probably open up more steps to explore that in more detail. Obviously, transfer of title is a huge part of any acquisition. This step is an interesting one in that there's nothing to tick or choose or no data to enter. All it's asking us to do is ensuring that we have obtained transfer of title documentation, which includes all of these points in front of us. So let's say we've done that. We've obtained proof of transfer of title. We can now record an acquisition date for our object. Bear in mind our acquisition failed option is still here. If anything goes wrong, we can still end this procedure now. But again, everything's still going well. So let's request an accession number. And this is where those workflow roles are going to come up again. So we need to request an accession number from a registrar. So we're going to, again, put in a request to another user, this time with registrar access, to assign our object an accession number. So again, we're going to jump over into another account and pick up from there. So I've now logged back in as a different user. This user has that registrar role, which means that I can now achieve the next step to assign an accession number. Note that because this role also has the approver workflow role turned on, I can also see the steps I did earlier on. But let's go ahead as a registrar and assign an accession number. Let's go ahead and give this a accession number. Obviously we're editing the previous number, which was referencing our entry procedure, but that will still obviously be linked to this object through its activity record. There we go, we've assigned a number. Let's record the date we did that. And again, we've got another step now to assign back to our curator to finish the process. So we'll pick a user. Note at this point, we can actually assign multiple users if we want. And they can decide between them who's going to do it. But let's leave it at one person for now. And one last time, we're going to jump over to our other user account and continue from there. So we're now back in with our curator role. And we can see if we scroll down, there's just a few final steps left to us before we can finish this workflow. So let's quickly go through these. Lots of checkbox steps. Have we labeled our object? And these are mainly, I think, checkbox steps. That we've acknowledged things, that we have photographed our object or not, so we can record that. We can record object credit lines. We will skip that for now, but there's a reminder here to record further object information as well, if anything had come up. Again, I'm just going to skip through these quickly as a demonstration. And we can add any more information to the acquisition record that might have come up as well. But otherwise, that's it. We have completed our acquisition record. We've come out of the workflow, and that's all done. So if you want any more information about workflows and how to make them work for you, or you have any other questions or inquiries about Collections Index Plus, please do get in touch. We'd love to hear from you. Thank you.